pictures and that available. Everyone got involved in a big way. And I'll always remember on that day, and Trevor was there. And all I do remember after we were casting that message, I said, General Hillier, I met your challenge. And that was framed in there as the coin that's hanging in the house to this day.
Wow.
So bits and pieces quick.
Love it.
Here we are, and after all these years, we've just hit in the last few months our 8,000 night stay.
Wow.
So that's, there's a lot of bits and pieces in between, but that's kind of the makeup of, Honor House and the Dream, and here we are now. Yeah.
That's a great story.
Oh, no kidding.
And you're a great storyteller.
No,
Yes, you are.
It's amazing, it's exciting, it's
What a
passionate.
journey.
And the amount of
No
people
kidding.
that this home has changed and saved their lives, helped their families, it's unbelievable. And you can ask Craig the emotions that run through here in this room, in that room, and there isn't a day that I leave here. You get in the car and there's some pretty heavy times, because they're not all happy stories and
No.
happy endings, right? And it wears on you a lot, but there's something about it when you leave here. There's an aura that, and I've been through a lot of them, when you look at the other houses that run for various other charities that we
Right.
have throughout, and they're all good. Canuck Place, I remember in the days before it wasn't where it was located, and there's so many good things. But the men and women in uniform, they're always helping everybody else, but they never really ask help for themselves. So it's a bit usual compared to a lot of my BC Paraplegic Association with Doug Mowat, back in my days, and Grace McCarthy, and then hence got on Vancouver Resource Society's board. And then, we're just growing through all these other organizations I've been so involved with, and through my city, and creating housing for people with high needs. And I'm used to high quads, and Trevor Green being a high quad because of a brain injury, not from car incident, spinal cord, but his was by brain. And seeing where Debbie worked so hard to get Trevor rehab. Since then, they had another little boy by the name of Noah now, and watching them grow, and how he's been an inspiration, an ambassador, and an advisor. And there's so much to fill in about where that's going and where we are, and with Honor Houses now, in the works for Ottawa, Halifax, Winnipeg, now Honor Ranch opening up May of this coming year.
Right.
To help across the country. The goal would be coast to coast to coast. They have kind of a similar kind of home in Edmonton, and they call it, I just drew a blank, Compassionate House, I just drew a blank. It is called, just drew a blank. But it was mainly for RCMP and Canadian Forces only. They broadened it a bit now because they have such a big base there. So that's why I had to try to justify something here, because it's not like we're on a base. In the U.S., they call them Fisher houses. And Fisher family actually got parts because the base is there. I mean, they're like small cities, right?
Right.
Well, if I go to Fort Lewis on training, there's 55,000 soldiers on one base. So it's literally a city, literally. And so they have a Fisher house there to help men and women that need help and stay there with their families.
Right.
And then in the military, we have the MFRC, Military Families Resource Center, to help them. But they never had anywhere, Susan, when they come to the greater Vancouver area, while he or she's getting treatment at GF Strong, VGH, Royal Columbia, and any of these agencies that need help, they would stay usually at the Holiday Inn or wherever at 200 some odd a night. And then after he or she's getting treatment, they go back to their hotel room, like, where am I going in life, whose fault it is, what, where, when. It's heavy duty. Here, at least they come. We purposely have no TVs or kitchens, if you notice, in the rooms, because it's all about coming down, cook your own meal, and socialize with the other families. Because usually during the day it's a bit quieter. They're out at their
Right.
appointments, and about 6:30 at night, the buzz comes, and they share their stories. They get to meet each other. Otherwise, you go to a hotel room, you get your
Right.
food at the IGA, you go upstairs. They can't afford to order day in and day out.
No.
And then you don't even get a hot plate, so they kind of buy it and they kind of figure it out in the room a bit. You get a little fridge usually, unless you're getting a suite. But then you're paying more for the suite. And often they're not here for 1, 2, 3 days. They're here for 1, 2, 3 weeks. So that bill's big.
Yeah.
So here, we purposely didn't put anything in the room, so it was about engaging with other families, coming down, just like your home away from home. And if you notice, our kitchen is in 2 styles. So for accessibility and for able body. So if you'll notice, you'll see 2 fridges, 2 stoves, and you'll notice the sinks and counters are
I
for
did.
wheelchair. But we made it to not give it the feeling like it's designed for a level 3 disability. The
Right.
showers are roll-in showers. They're kind of designed for, except the doors are 3-foot doors, except for some of these areas. The rest of the house is designed to meet a level 3. The ceilings are designed if we have to lift them and put them into bed. Trevor has his own temporary kind of wheel that Debbie does, and then puts Trevor into bed. And the elevator's designed to take a full gurney, and everything you see has been donated, virtually everything. So right down to the furniture, and thanks to Portico Design and all the work. I mean, in your industry, our industry, there's a lot of people that have been involved that have helped. As I bounce around here a bit. But where was I? And then if I look at our appliances, Coast Appliances, Your Country Needs You, all the appliances right down to the washer and dryer, all donated. We reached the chairman of Coast out of East, and they helped us. And when I think back on everything, it's amazing. Right down to the furniture, everything was designed.
We were talking about the furniture, Amacon and
Amacon, and thanks to Teresa Sutherland, and then they helped finish off our outside laneway house because it was more for the post-traumatic stress. Some just need that separation. But that was a garage. To get back in the days, that wasn't quite in New West approved for that kind of coach housey kind of, unless the character status, but we got that approval with the kitchen. And if you look at it, it looks like everything came from a condo project, right? The 20 small dishwasher and the bathroom and that. So Teresa said that just fell off the truck, so she was very helpful and helped us a lot. So everyone came together. It was quite the barn raiser, and thanks to General Hillier. And then Bill Truelove, or Tyrone Pyle, the Rear Admiral. We had a lot of humps and bumps getting through things, and every once in a while I'd call him. He said, you know what, Al? He said, get over here on the puddle jumpers was his word, so harbor air, and come see me. He's at the base. And I mean, he controlled 5,500 seamen and soldiers there. So, like, he was the god there. So I'd come over, he'd have Danish on the table, we'd sit around and he'd make you feel good, motivate you. I know General Hillier's supporting you. Don't worry on the Canadian Forces side, it's coming. Because there was some pretty low days of this not coming together. And he was always a big inspiration. So on our first gala, I remember having him there, and then I had to raise some big money quick, so Sarah McLaughlin stepped up big time. She did that song Love Come, and we raised, we were well over $400,000 net.
The first one?
The first fundraiser. It was huge money, and that really got us going. And then Sarah stepping up to help us, because she's asked every day for something, right? They're always asked. And unconditionally, she was there for us just on a moment's notice.
What do you think the appeal is that all these people are just like stepping up?
Well, it's...
Because you're right, I mean, people are asked all the time.
All the time. It's
why are they
relationship
responding?
driven. I remember Pete in the day and how, and getting involved and having Pete on our board here is gigantic, Susan, and how he's moved things forward. It's unbelievable what you do, and you hear it out there too. You don't often hear it, but I hear it, how it comes around. It's amazing what you do. And then hence, here you are because of Pete. It's a connection. But what it came down to was relationships. And in our industry, and a bit of on the real estate side, and that's what I knew to go to. Windows, roofing, siding, developers, can you help? And no, I can't help in that area, but let me get to so-and-so, they owe me a favor. And it was all that connection, right?
Right.
Aquilini's, some ways it was because of Hillier and how, but it was also me helping them out in Pitt Meadows and Pitt Boulder, and there's always a way. There's something. It was relationships and connections that helped build. Walter Frankel did community centers with us when I was a park commissioner. I would approach Walter, Your Country Needs You, when he finished doing Trout Lake Community Center. And it was just, Sunset with, back then with Bing Tom. There was a number of different reasons how it connected, right? So I used some of my wearing the hat of developers and getting them through unconditionally. You need it? Yeah. Jim Loudon, Pete Rutgers, we need a meeting 6 a.m. the next morning. I'll bring the donuts because if somebody needs something, you just got to help them. If everyone's busy. So great, are we busy at 5 in the morning? Okay, how about from 4 to 5? Let's meet at Denny's. They're open till at 3. There's no excuse, right? If we really care, oh God, can we meet next week? Well, why? Well, I'm just so busy this week. Well, are you busy between 2 and 3 in the morning? Or 3 and 4? Denny's open, we can all meet there. So staff at my city staff, like, oh, well, we're busy. Well, you can work extra time off or I'll figure it out. And so they all ended up showing from 6 to 7. So I helped a lot of architects that had to help their developers get going, and they remembered that. So when I came to call on them, they would step up, and my tag was always Your Country Needs You.
That's great.
The backline part of it was, well, Al helped, now it's maybe time to help. Everyone helps, right? I never called a chip for a chip, but they kind of knew the underlying is, you never know what goes around comes around, and it's just the nature, right? I met Lenny Moy this morning, and I had to help him on some stuff. I said, I got some young soldiers that really need some help over here. And he said, find out how much do you need. I jumped around because of Peter Wessick from West Group. I was shy $500,000 at an absolutely critical stage in this home. He knew I was struggling that day as I was working on the brewery district stuff. He comes in, he's always, you know what Peter's like? He's just kind of the big, my back, the big guy. Walked down very soft with the sweater. I felt like I was meeting the big Mr. Rogers, right? Never found it coming. Hi, yeah, very gentle guy. And I'm sitting there. I remember exactly how I was sitting. I was facing east in the boardroom. The windows at the back, and everyone finished. Gino, and we finished up our stuff. Can't remember what we were. Oh, I think at the time we were working. No, it wasn't. Yeah, I think it was the Prescott in North Vancouver. On 13th and Lonsdale.
Right.
It was one project. He says, "What's wrong, Al?" And I said, "I just got this problem." He says, "Why don't we stay back for a minute?" And so we go. So I said, "Well, I'm just working on the project. What are you working on now?" Okay. So I told him. I said, "Yeah, I've got this problem doing this home away from home. And yeah, I heard about it. It's in New Westminster from the mayor, because good old Mayor Wainwright. When you watch some of the videos, and if you watch on the first video that was Sarah did, and he got up on stage, because I had to recognize them big time.
Oh, yeah.
And when you actually capture those, if you ask Craig, can I look at the various videos that were done for Honor House? They're only 3 and 4 minutes. You pick up a lot from the fire chief in New West, the fire chief here, and Tim Armstrong, everyone who came together. It's unbelievable what they've done. And the legs that this has got growing now, and the commitment. Because again, the firefighters are always asked for something, the birthday at the fire hall, or the this or that, the police, the shooting, the range, the drive in a police car, they call it, and all of that kind of stuff. So, it's like one more big, and this was a big ask always, but they were there. And so Peter Wessick, I told him, he said, "So it's probably, oh God, we got this house, thanks to Michael Flanagan, we're here, but we're down the road, we got some big problems, I've got to come up with another $500,000, I just had some calls, so during our meeting, I couldn't get focused." So, and then we got into a little more detail about it. And he said, "Okay." And he said, "So let me see how I can help out." I remember he always has that big, slowly walk, goes down to his office. He comes back about 3 or 4 minutes later, about not less than 5 minutes. It felt like an eternity.
Of course.
He came back. I remember how he sat at the end. He sat down and he took out. It's like Jimmy Pattison when he wrote a check for Stanley Park for my renewal of the Jewel when we had the big windstorm.
Right.
Then.
Yeah.
And he wrote a check for $1 million, Jimmy, at that time, the renewal of the Jewel, because that was our Jewel, Stanley Park. So
right.
I held a telethon at Global and raised over $9 million. And so he walked in the same fashion, Jimmy, and I always remember that checkbook. It was a personal checkbook, it was like the company. And he flipped it open, and he says, "Who do I make this check on?" And I looked at him, I said, "Well, I can't do anything right now." He said, "Don't worry, Al. How much is it for?" And I said, "Well, was it $500,000 I was having?" So he wrote a check for $500,000, Honor House Society, pulled it out. He says, "Here you go, pay me back when you can." That was it. No napkin, no promissory, no legally. I said, "Well, I got to do something. I could pop off tomorrow." So, oh God, it was probably half a year later. I said to Joel from Dowlings, "Can you do up something? We should have something, right?"
Yeah.
So Joel did something. He said, "Oh, that's fine." And that was the end of that. It was about 3 years later. We had a second fundraiser because we had Sarah McLaughlin. Then we had, was it Jim Cuddy?
Yeah, Blue Rodeo.
And Blue Rodeo, and then we had, it was supposed to be Jan Arden, but then she got sick, so then Michael Bublé came in, and then we had Jan Arden.
Yeah.
And now we got this year's coming up shortly, in the next few months. So I remember Peter from that whole thing, and then our fundraising with Sarah to help start paying things down, and now we're completely whole. There was a final conclusion here, the bigger part, because we still technically, the government gave us that $2.3 million interest-free, right?
Right.
We chipped that number down because that number kind of grew because we had the Peter $500,000 that I had to pay back, right?
Right.
But our operating costs are very low, but other things grew from there that ate up the extra $500,000. Because by the time we finished your land and house, we were over $5.5 million, what you see. And so that 2.3 grew to about 2.8 because then we were able to pay from our fundraising over 3 years. I said to Peter, "Here's your money back." So we had a bit more debt that we bore, but we just felt we needed to do that. It was just the right thing to do. And he was said, "Are you fine? Do you know?" Yeah, it was a stretch, but we did it. And Grant Smith, like every time we reported, "Well, let me report this month, so we're okay, but we're not really okay. But it depends how the ledger looks." Like how you hear him in the meetings, right? "Let me, how should I tell you with this motor?" He's always good,
Yeah.
So So I thought, okay, how are we going to work this? So our debt was up in a sense to 2.8. It was on the books for 2.3. We didn't have to pay monthly mortgage payment. We did a few payments, but then the government said, don't worry about it. So, at our last dinner, were you at the last one where Rich Coleman was there?
Yes.
So at our last dinner before this one, Rich Coleman got up and made an announcement that they were retiring our entire debt from BC Housing, and we no longer owed a dime here. So they wrote it off.
Wow.
That was unbelievable. And there's actually how that wording came down, and the whole video clip of showing that with him and the province. It was powerful. So we didn't have to work a lot of fundraising dinners. Every dough that we raise now is to help secure the house, because our burn rate isn't that big. And now we're off to Honor Ranch. So the home away from home is to help people while they're in Vancouver getting treatment. Honor Ranch will give that treatment. And as you might have caught in the papers recently, we just lost 15 soldiers this year to suicide.
Yeah.
And the CDS was talking about that. But you don't hear about all our police, fire, and ambulance. On an average, there's 2 to 3 a month that are suicides right now for our first responders, as high as that. So easily,
no
that
idea.
number, easily. And then some of them, just young Alina, Master Bombardier Alina from the Seaforth, he in July killed himself behind the Lav on Burrard Street. You might have caught a bit of that in the paper or not.
Oh.
And he said to his wife, she was happened to be up at the regiment at the Seaforth, I'm going to go get coffees across the street there on First Avenue. And he just wasn't getting the help he needed, and then he shot himself in the head behind the Lav. That was in July of this year, or just late last year. So all the more reason I felt if we had this ranch open last year because of the Wands list, if I know we would have saved that life. 100% would have saved it. So I feel guilty about that. But they say, Al, you can't do it all. But as we all come together, Pete, every time I think of it, I call them chinchillas, but those pack rats, when you're under them, the big eyes, what he had to go through. And they were holding their traps like they were trapping. I thought, holy my God. But what you're doing will literally save lives. You are contributed, but this time next year, of the lives that you save. And how can you translate that? You can't buy that.
Yeah,
you can't help.
No.
And here she has gone. But the families behind that are devastated. We have a fire chief in the Okanagan that Greg won't tell which town he's from. The city didn't really support him. The fire chief, remember, everyone expects to go to the chief for help. Where does the chief go when he needs help? And he had a lot of things going on, heavy post-traumatic stress. Well, his deputy captain, they couldn't save him. They found him just weeks before in the garage hanging, and that devastated. That was his final nut. He was almost ready to pull his life. They got him in minutes in time, but they didn't have the money through the Orion, through the program down here. He didn't have the money because he burned through all his own cash trying to get help. The employer, being the city, weren't really the biggest of help. Sometimes they can be a bit tough because they don't need that image. They were trying to push him out. He was even further devastated. We got him down here. We raised a bunch of dough ourselves. We housed him here. After he got through the program, back home, back over this last year, turned around. You know what? This house and that program saved his life. Not only that, though, Susan, it's all the family that's also.
Yeah, we've talked about
And that's all the things that come behind it. When you see the families here while he or she's getting treatment, they're impacted. Their kids are impacted. And I remember that, from even Ron McDonald House, they have a sick child, the family and the impact from that, even more so when these men and women are expected to be helping everybody else, but they can't go out and ask for that help. Or the stigma is better than it was years ago that I'm asking for help, but they still just, even aside from the stigma, they don't know how to ask for it, or worse, where to get it. So if you're up in Northern Yukon Trail, Nelson, Kitimat, and you're a paramedic, there's no way you can afford to get down here on a paramedic budget and get help. So how do they get their help up there? Online Skyping, getting a counselor or a clinical psychologist. Well, F1, hi, yes, I'm having a problem. It doesn't work. There's no real connection. So we got to get them down. And sometimes we get cozy in here. We hope we're never busy because it means that it's okay. But we know underlying there's problems. So the more we as board members, Pete and all of us tell the story, the more we get busy. The more we get busy, the better we can help. And that's where we're compelled to drive, tell our story. Our burn rate's very low, so we can feel good about that. We have one full-time person. You met Craig. Patty's downstairs. She's our part-time bookkeeper. That's it. The other 70 to 80 volunteers up and down, but we run at about 70 consistently. That's what keeps it all going.
Wow.
And so here we are, bouncing around a little bit.
And
So
when we went to Ashcroft there, and we had a short presentation at the River's End,
and the mayors were there. And what really struck me was, wow, the impact that the video and your speech had on those that were
Especially the fire chief of
in the room,
Ashcroft.
and the fire chief
He was in.
was welling up.
He was in. Yeah, he was struggling.
because the fire chief before him drowned in the river.
If you remember last
he
year.
rescued him, and he rescued him.
Oh, you told, yeah, you told me
Yeah, I
that
made
story.
this.
Found him, brought
Yeah.
him in, but that was a big story. During the heavy floods, he went out and got washed away and died. And